Hey party people, I'm Kelly.
And I'm Bean.
And welcome back. We're first time beekeepers here in Central Virginia. And today we're doing a questions and answers video because, well, we asked if you guys had questions and we're going to go through and answer them,
Yep.
All right, so we put out a post on our Facebook. People responded. And so we're just going to go through the list that we have down over here and answer them. So...
And feel free, if you do have any other questions, leave them below this video. Go to Facebook, leave them there, wherever you want. And once we get enough questions, we'll do another video.
Perfect. All right, number one. You want to ask me the question?
Sure. Where do baby bees come from?
I thought he was going to, sing it to me almost.
No.
Okay. So, baby bees come from Bees R Us.
What?
Okay. Really, the stork brings them.
The stork? What
Yeah.
stork?
Like where babies come from, the stork.
Oh, I think those are nice stories that we tell to children. I don't think that's where baby bees come from.
Okay, so baby bees really come from eggs from queen bees. Queen bees lay eggs in the hive. They lay like thousands a day, right?
Yep.
Okay, so lots of babies. They lay the eggs, and then I don't know. Do you want to talk more about the whole
Sure.
process? So it's kind of a process, just kind of like having a baby. Takes some time.
Yep. So the queen will lay the egg, and there are 3 different castes of bees that can be in the hive. So you've got your queen, you have drones, and you have worker bees. When the queen lays the egg, it is either a fertilized egg or it isn't a fertilized egg. It's non-fertilized, unfertilized, I guess is the word for that. The unfertilized eggs become drones, whereas the fertilized eggs can be either queens or workers. All 3 castes of bees, when the egg is laid, take about 2.5 to 3.5 days to hatch out. When they hatch out, they become larvae, so they're like little grubs. The difference in this stage between the different castes of bees is with the workers and the drones, they're fed some royal jelly, which is a substance that's secreted from bees' heads and is used to feed the larvae. But they're only given a little bit of that, and then they're given quite a bit of what's called bee bread, which is a mixture of pollen and honey. So that's
But it's not like real bread.
No, not real bread, just
Yeah.
mixed up pollen and honey.
Yeah. It would be cooler if it was real bread.
So the queens, on the other hand, are fed a whole lot more of the royal jelly, which is what makes them become queens instead of workers. So each of them are fed a different diet based on what caste they're going to be, but each of them, from the time the egg is laid to the time their larva stage is done, takes about 9 days. And at that point, the cells are what's called capped. So the bees will go in and will put a little wax coating over the top of the larvae. So
when you pull, we don't have it now, but when we pull frames out of the hive, you'll hear people talk about oh, look at that brood. The brood is the capped eggs in the cell. So, you can very well easily see the capped eggs, and it's just called brood. So
technically they're capped pupae.
Okay.
But yes.
Not same thing, but same idea, I
yes.
guess. Yeah.
So yes, once the larvae get to a certain age, which is 9 days after the egg has been laid, they get capped over and go into what's called the pupa stage, which is where they go from being little grubs to being what you would normally think of when you thought of a honeybee. This is the stage where the time periods actually differ quite a bit. So with queens, surprisingly, they actually have the shortest period between the time the egg is laid to the time that they hatch out. That's 16 days. Then you have the next quickest, which is the workers. They take 21 days. And the drones will take actually 24 days, since they're a little bit bigger than the workers. And each of them will hatch out and, as I said, will look like what you would think a normal honeybee would look like. But they're not quite fully adult bees yet. Yes, they're adult bees and they look right, but they still have some maturing to do.
Some growing up to do.
Yep.
All right. Number too, or I guess another part of that. How long do bees live? So Brandon just said that there are different castes, or kind of like, I don't want to say levels, but different types of bees in the hive. So they all have different lifespans. So a queen bee can live a couple of years,
Yep.
right? Okay.
They can live maybe 3 or 4 years. As they get closer to the end of their lives, they don't really lay as many eggs and they don't do as well, but
They're
they
less
can live that
productive.
much. Yes, they
Yeah.
can live that long now.
Yeah. Okay. Worker bees, they usually live like 6 to 8 weeks. Unless it's the winter time, they can live through the winter because they're laying fat-bodied bees, worker
Correct.
bees, right? Okay. So they have fat stored everywhere, so they can last through the winter. So they will live, those few months through the winter.
And the bees, as she said, will create those fat-bodied bees for the winter. They can also create those fat-bodied bees when they're going into a period of dearth, when there's not really any nectar or pollen coming through. If they know it's going to be a long period, they can actually make fat-bodied bees any time of year, which, as I said earlier, most people say that there are 3 castes of bees: the queens, the workers, and the drones. Some people actually say that this fat-bodied bee should be a separate caste from the workers, because while technically it's still a worker bee, it's so different than a worker bee and it serves such a different purpose. Some people think that it should be called its own caste.
Yeah. So then the drones, they are usually about the same lifespan for the worker bees, so like 6 to 8 weeks. But when winter comes, the hive says, "Peace out, boys. We only need you for reproduction, and we don't need to feed you through the winter. So see you later. Good
They're
luck."
big mouths to feed. I don't know if you all know any younger boys. They eat a lot, just like the drones. Got to
Yeah.
kick them out for winter.
Yep. So they don't stay in the hive through the winter. So, yeah. All right. Our next question is this one, right?
Yes.
Okay. So, how do bees make beeswax? So, they secrete it from their abdomens.
They take in honey or nectar, depending on kind of what time of year it is. Mostly, if they're making beeswax, they're consuming nectar. They want the fresh stuff, and they're consuming pollen. And in their gut, they're using the energy. They're mixing that together, and they secrete on their abdomen.
They seek.
They secrete from their abdomen wax out of wax glands. But not all of the worker bees will do this.
Just the younger ones, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
As I said, when the bees first emerge from their capped cells, yes, they're adults, but they still have some maturing to do. Well, in the first kind of half of their lives, we could say, it depends based on the hives and kind of what the hives actually need as far as a workforce. So if there's a lot of younger bees in there, this will be slightly different, or if there's a lot of older bees, this time frame will be slightly different. But for about half their lives, they'll actually spend it never having left the hive. And then they'll only leave the hive for the second half of their life. So the first half of their lives, they'll do jobs that are solely in the hive, and one of these is being a wax builder. This means that those bees that are in the hive have never gone out and have never gotten in contact with maybe some pathogens. They haven't gotten in contact with maybe pesticides or herbicides that humans have sprayed. So they are some of the cleanest bees in the hive. And because of that, that makes the wax some of the cleanest part of the hive when the bees produce it. Throughout the life of the wax, people have actually called the beeswax in the hive the liver of the hive because it tends to kind of suck in the toxins that would be in the hive and could cause issues to the bees. But when the bees first produce it, it's very clean. So that's only bees that haven't actually left the hive yet.
Yeah. And lots of people make that into products.
Yep.
So we hope to one day as well.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Next question. How do bees communicate? So first thing, pheromones. They communicate that way. And then second is they do the waggle dance. So their dance is not like the normal like party. Yeah, like, they don't dance like that. They do more of like a shaking dance. Mm-hmm. So they'll come into the hive on the frames. They'll do their dance and they do it up as towards the sun. And then whichever way they do their dance, it's to tell the other bees like, oh, go this way, go northeast. And
Right. Well, go compared to the sun. So,
Yeah.
as she said, straight up would be directly towards the sun.
Yeah.
Straight down would be directly away from the sun. And then any angle in between those would say, like, hey, go out, look at where the sun is, and then go this way.
Turn that way.
Yep.
Yeah. So they just do their little dance, and then how they do it, how long as to how far to go.
The distance of the
Distance,
dance is how far away whatever they're trying to communicate is. So
Yeah.
this can be done for, say, a big field of flowers that maybe is really good, has a lot of nectar or pollen in it. It can also be done, the bees at some point in a hive's life will get to a size where they say, hey, we're too big for the place we are. We're going to take some of you and we're going to move out. It's called swarming. It's how the hive itself reproduces.
They say bees out, and they leave.
Yes.
Okay.
When they do this, there are a lot of what's called scout bees flying around trying to find a new place to live. Well, those scout bees will actually come back and they will also do waggle dances on this ball of bees called a swarm. And that's how they can communicate where this cavity is that they want to live in.
Perfect.
And then she had also talked about pheromones. Pheromones are, well, I should say, bees have a very, very good sense of smell.
Not so much sight.
No.
If they would need like prescription glasses to see, like they can't see very well.
Right. They can kind of see, but it's not like you or I where you can look at stuff and you know exactly where everything is,
Yeah.
what color it is, like things like
And they
that.
live in the dark in their hot,
Right.
so it's hard to see anyway.
Right. So one way they can communicate is with smells called pheromones. One of these, just as an example, is the queen mandibular pheromone.
Can you say that again?
Queen mandibular pheromone.
Queen mandibular pheromone.
Yes.
Hopefully we said that right.
The queen will give off this scent, and bees in the hive will actually end up coming up and bumping into the queen and getting scent on them, and that's a good way to spread it through the hive. But what this scent does is it allows the bees in the hive to know there's a queen here, she's laying, everything's good.
All is well.
Yep, all is well. There's no problems right now.
You keep going, girl. Do your thing.
And on the flip side of that, if the bees are like, hey, I'm not smelling this, then they can maybe start going into a mode where we need to make a new queen, we need to get on this, we're kind of going into an emergency situation. And this, I believe, can happen even 15 minutes after the queen has been killed, taken out of the hive, whatever. It's a pretty
They're
quick
fast.
process.
Yeah.
Right. So this can also be spread not only through the hive just by the bees touching each other, but on the very outside of the hive, right near the entrance, there are bees that will go out and they turn around and they put their butts up in the air, their abdomens,
Their booties.
and they open up what's called a Nasanov gland.
Can you say that again?
The Nasanov gland.
Nasanov gland.
The Nasanov gland is a little white strip that's right above the stinger on the bee on their abdomen. And the bee will, as I said, spin around, put the abdomen up in the air,
Shake that booty, girl.
and then flap her wings really hard. And this Nasanov gland actually gives off the queen mandibular pheromone. So any other bees that are flying around the hive trying to figure out, oh, hey, where's home? I know I saw that tree when I was leaving. I'm in the right spot, but I don't know exactly where my house is. They can then smell that pheromone from afar because the bees are fanning it. That's what it's called when the bees flap their wings very hard to move air. They're fanning that queen mandibular pheromone into the air so that the other bees can figure out where they live, how to get home.
Perfect. All right. Let's see. Next, steps for getting started. Let me turn on my paper here for my notes. Okay. So if you know Brandon Carr, the last year of his life, research, number one. So really getting knowledge from videos, books, whatever you can get knowledge from.
Other
Hopefully from
beekeepers.
us, you know.
Right. But other beekeepers in your area can be a
Sure.
good resource if you know them. You could also join a beekeeping club. There are many all around, so
If
you
they're
can
meeting.
Right, yes, if they're meeting right now. But you could try to reach out to one of them, see if you could join in on some meetings, get some information that way. You could find out about beekeeping classes and maybe take one of those. But it's always good. It's always better to have more information than less information going into something as complicated as beekeeping. You could probably do it, and you might do all right if you don't really know what you're doing the first year, but it's always better to have a little bit of extra
knowledge.
Help. Yep.
Yeah. All right. So we also are, like, there's a ton of supplies needed to do this, clearly. Like we said before, our shed, we got lots of stuff in there. So we're going to make a separate video going through all of the things that we have that we're starting off with. Of course, you know, different people do things differently, but we're going to go through that in a separate video when it's hopefully warmer out. If you've been in Virginia, you know it's been cold, it's been snowing, and we're ready for winter to be over.
But be on the lookout for that video when we put it out.
Yes, so we'll be doing that when it gets warmer. And then another thing, you have to actually get bees to get started.
That's an important part of beekeeping.
So, like we said earlier, research is important, and so there are different types of bees that you can get, and so research to find out what you're looking for. So, clearly we have not kept bees before, so we can't say like, oh, this type is real bad. We just know like what we've learned about them. So we are hoping to get carniolans, carnies, as people say. We want them because they hopefully will have better, like a good temperament, but they don't go ham in winter. So what do I mean by that? I mean they're not going to use all of their resources that they've created in the year through the winter. Like they're not going to fly through them. So like Italians are very common because they make a lot of bees and they make a lot of honey. But that means that they have a lot of mouths to feed over the winter, so they go through their supplies a lot quicker. So we're hoping to get carnies because we think, fingers crossed, and hope that they will be able to manage that better in the winter than an Italian hive would.
Right, and we're okay with trading the extra amount of honey that we could get with Italians for maybe a little easier survivability in winter.
Sure.
But those aren't the only types of bees that you could get.
No.
There are tons of different types of honeybees that you could start with.
Yeah.
Like we had talked about the carnies that we're planning on getting. There's also a type of bee called Russians, which they are carnies that have been bred for resistance to varroa mites, one of the pests that the honeybees are facing.
Which we could talk, well, not we, Brandon could talk a whole video on that, like the resistance part of and treating.
Just varroa mites in general.
Right, yeah.
So if you have questions on varroa mites, go ahead and leave them down below and we'll add it into the next video.
Sure.
But they're, as I said, they're like carnies, so when it comes into wintertime, or really any type of dearth period, they pretty much just stop all brood production. They stop
pull
making
back.
the babies because they want to make sure that they have enough supplies to get through the winter. Then there are some other types that are just only in
United States?
Yes.
Yeah.
Maybe not only in the United States, but what I'm trying to say with that is that different countries have different types of bees. We've gotten kind of to the point worldwide, I believe, where a lot of people don't move bees between countries anymore. Yeah. Because
side to side.
Yes.
Okay.
They don't move bees between countries anymore because of pests that have been brought in and moved around, and we don't want that. We don't want new pests.
We don't need their nasties.
No. So there are some types of bees that are only available in other countries that you can't get in the U.S., or some types of bees that are in the U.S. that you can't get in other countries. But there are many different types of bees, so it's always a good idea to, as we've said, do your research, figure out kind of what you're looking for, what you're hoping to do with your bees, and go from there.
Sure. Yeah. So that you even have to fill out paperwork just bringing bees state to state just for that same reason. So definitely want to look into that. We are hoping to get our bees from a local place here in Virginia, and yeah, just really go from there.
Which I can elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah.
When you're actually looking to get your bees, where are you going to get them from?
Yeah,
That's
so
a good question.
Beekeepers, right? Like other beekeepers sell their bees. So they would be a good resource. And then,
Bee supply stores would also be a good place to look for bees.
yeah.
So some of the local ones, you've got Shenandoah Bee Supply that's
Yeah.
pretty close to us.
Yeah, and actually an extension colleague and her husband owned that. So that would be a good one to check out.
Yep.
And then,
Scottsville Bee Supply is one. We actually got our bee suits from there.
Yeah.
So we've worked with them a little bit. They
yeah,
seemed like
they were
good
nice.
people.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. And then,
But then, like, we just Googled, hey, what beekeepers are selling bees near us? And
Sure.
we went through a list that someone had compiled of beekeepers in the state who were selling bees or close to the state.
Right.
And we looked through those and looked through the smaller beekeepers who had bees.
yeah, so we kind of narrowed it down that way. We still haven't ordered our bees yet. So, we will be doing that very soon.
Yep, and we'll make a video for when we end up going to get the bees and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Perfect. Did you want to talk about like where you got your supply, like your
Sure.
actual stuff in the shed?
So yes, for supplies, the bee supply stores, great place to get supplies. It's in the name.
But you know that I love to save money and look around for deals.
Yes, always a good idea to check multiple places for different prices.
Yeah.
So where we ended up getting most of our supplies was actually a place called Hillco Bee Supplies.
Yeah. You can type that on the computer. Where are they
Yep.
at? Do you know? I don't know.
I believe they're in Illinois.
Not Virginia.
It's north of us somewhere. I don't remember exactly. But yes, as Kelly said, you can type in Hillco Bee Supply into, say, Google or something, and it'll come on up with their website. And working with them just enough to get these materials that we've ordered so far, they seem to be pretty good, and I've heard good things about them.
Yeah.
So.
Shipping was good because, shipping's kind of questionable
Yep.
right now.
It didn't take very long to get
no.
it, and we had 5 big boxes of material come in, so
Yeah.
I was happy to work with them, and they seem to be a pretty good company so far.
Yeah. So we'll have more vendors, I guess, or people that we buy things from that we will share when we buy more things or find good deals for you. So, next question. How many hives are we starting with?
We're going to be starting with 3 hives.
And you might be wondering, why 3?
Well, one reason that Kelly has told me is that I want to throw away all our money.
Yeah.
Not throw
I feel
it away,
like Brandon
but...
is just out there with the money, like, take it, all of you. Thank you so much. Not really.
But no, that's not the main reason.
So really his reason?
So I've always heard and been told you at least want to start with 2 hives. The reasoning for that is if you have only 1 hive and something goes wrong, your queen dies, you have problems, they're not building up quick enough, they're looking not great.
What are you going to do?
Right, that's it. That's the only hive you have.
You done.
You're out of luck.
Bye.
So I've always heard at least have 2 hives. So if you lose your queen in one, you have resources from the other hive that you can pull over and supplement the one that's not doing as well. And I figured, if 2's better than 1,
Yeah.
isn't 3 better than
Yeah.
2? So we figured we'd just end up going with 3 just for that extra insurance. Just in case something happens, we'll have a little bit extra to pull from.
Yeah.
To make
So we
the other
really
ones
want
better.
to have at least 2 hives to get through the winter. So then we, if we lose our hives for the winter, like that's another couple $100 we have to buy new bees. So
Right.
we
You want to
wanna-
do all you can to make sure that they're as strong as possible.
Right. We want them to live. So we're hoping that we have at least a couple strong hives to make it through the winter. I mean, if we have more, I'm not going to be upset about it. So, yeah. So we're going to start out with 3. All right. And I think the last question, right?
Yep. Last
Yep.
question of the
This
day.
is what people always ask. It's like, oh, hey, bee lady, when can we get some honey?
Right.
And
yeah.
it's like-
oh, you've got honeybees? When can I get some of that?
Yeah, it's like, well, girl, I don't even have bees yet, so you're going to have to wait. No, but honestly, I mean, we will have honey this year for the bees to have. I don't know that it will probably be a very, very small, are you going to do that with me?
Oh, small.
Chance that we actually have honey for us to consume or sell.
Right.
So, that's how the bees are going to get through the winter. That's their resource. That's their nutrients that they're going to have. So we are guessing we probably won't have honey this year, but hopefully next year they will be bringing it in. because they have to really start from the ground up this year, and establish themselves. So
Right.
we don't want to take away their resources, so then they die in the winter. So
We're starting with what's called nukes, which is pretty much just
a
a small hive. It's got everything that the bees need to have a hive, but it's just small. So this year they're going to be starting off kind of behind where a normal hive or colony would be.
Right.
And then hopefully next year, if they survive the winter and we do everything right, then they'll start off a lot stronger at the beginning of next year so they can have that excess that we can take.
Right. And they will have some things already established, which is nice about getting a nuke compared to the box of bees.
The packages.
The package of bees.
Which is just a bunch of bees in a
little
box.
Like literally if you ordered a box from Amazon and it was like this big, like that's what it is. And then you just throw them in there. And they have to build from nothing.
Right.
So at least the nukes have something that, I mean, it's small, but it's
Right.
better than nothing.
But they've got brood in there, they've got honey, they've got pollen, so they're not starting from scratch.
Yeah. So if you see us next year, fingers crossed, you can get honey from us then.
Yep.
So that's really all. If you have any other questions or, just want to say something about our video, or you just weren't quite sure exactly what we meant by something, you can just comment that below. And I think that's really it, right?
Yep. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, we'll see you next time. Peace out.